Hey everyone, we are live. I am David. This is High Shelf Gaming, and I'm joined today by two wonderful contributors, people I've been watching in the cyberpunk space, and I'm very excited to start our How to Cyberpunk session as part of Gen Con Online, which some of you may have come from Gen Con Online. Some of you may have come here directly from like Twitter and our own Discords and our own communities and all that kind of stuff. I would ask, please, if you came here from Gen Con Online and you're one of the 50 people who got a ticket, please go there and say, yep, I'm turning in my ticket so that Gen Con knows you showed up. If you don't do it, like, it's fine. But if you could do that, that'd be really nice. Um, Sorry, a little bit of housekeeping to get out of the way right away. I would love to do quick introductions for anybody who doesn't know everybody else. High Shelf Gaming, we're a podcast and a stream and all that kind of stuff. By all means, look in the abouts for more stuff if you're interested. I don't feel like I need to talk more about myself. I'd much rather hear Linda Druttercup. Can you talk a little bit about yourself and your kind of cyberpunk history and all that kind of stuff?
Okay. Right, yeah, my name's Linda. I stream myself under Druttercup, and I'm one of the GMs and founders of Hint_Plays on Twitch as well. We're an actual play channel. To say we're a variety channel is probably understating the matter. We play a lot of different games, which means that we get to shake things up. People take time in and out of the GM chair, and we all get to experience different genres. Been playing oh God, I've been playing and GMing for far too long, far longer than I normally generally admit. But it's
I
got to
didn't
be
mean to ask you
kicking
to
on.
age yourself.
Hey, it's fine. I've been GMing for got to be kicking on for 30 years.
Nice. That's awesome.
Which is a bit scary, to be honest. My main exposure to the whole cyberpunk genre, although I played like single sessions and created so many characters for things that just then didn't happen, for things like Cyberpunk 2020, cyberspace. Um, but my main exposure when I started gaming was Shadowrun,
Yeah.
which is, for those who don't know, and there conceivably could be some, it's cyberpunk married with Tolkien, uh, elves, dwarves, etc., and magic,
Yeah.
coupled with corporate dystopia,
Yeah.
and high tech. Which is always its own thing, and it's great fun. Um,
Katrina, who's our mod tonight, or today, I should say, she loves Shadowrun, has been on our show talking about Shadowrun, has always threatened to run Shadowrun on the stream. So, like, I get you there. And
yeah.
I love Shadowrun. I've played
Mm.
that back in college and all that kind of stuff. Like, I totally get you there. And it's definitely within the
My
genre, I think.
Yeah, my specialities are investigations and horror, which tie in really nicely when I do want to run a cyberpunk game, because I can go that little bit darker, a little bit psychological, but tend not to go outright gore or anything like that. Um, I like to put I like to put characters under pressure, not the players. I like
Mm-hmm.
to put the characters under pressure in confined situations. Um, my most recent things have been run in, a single house. In one case, in 3 rooms of a single house, which
Very
was not my
small world.
intent, but hey, yeah. And never, ever, ever relax if you're invited to a house party in the game I'm running. Put it that way.
You
Uh,
gotta guard the whole time because it's gonna get bad.
yeah.
It's good.
But yeah, I've basically been playing and running various games, including the cyberpunk genre, for many years. And we got on Hintplays, I managed to get out the first in the wild play of the Cyberpunk Red Jumpstart kit
Yeah.
when it released,
Yeah,
or
you did
just
the
before it
first,
released.
the apartment,
Yep,
right? You were the very first to stream the apartment, which
we
is
were the
awesome.
first to, yeah, and we were able to walk people through who weren't at all familiar either with Cyberpunk or with the game itself, because, hadn't played 2020, hadn't really come into contact with it. So it was really nice to be able to do a breakdown while running, and explain the world, explain some of the concepts behind it, and see where we were going.
Cool. That's really
So
cool.
that seemed to work. Okay, I'll stop talking now.
That was awesome. I loved it. Thank you. Simon,
Yeah.
why don't you talk a little bit about your kind of background with, oops, sorry to hit the microphone, everybody. I didn't mean to beat up your ears. Um, Simon, why don't you talk a little bit about your experiences with Cyberpunk and kind of what brings you here too?
Yeah, I started with the cyberpunk genre with Shadowrun. I want to say early 2000,
Yeah.
something like that. It's been a while, and I mean, I did play the Shadowrun like Super Nintendo game before, but I had no idea it was a tabletop RPG back
Right.
when I played it.
Yeah, who did?
Yeah, so I started with Shadowrun for a while and didn't know that Cyberpunk 2020 existed at all
Oh,
until Cyberpunk 2077 was announced, and then I read that it was based on a TTRPG, and that's when I delved hard into Cyberpunk.
wow, that blows me away. Okay, cool. But Linda, you've been in Cyberpunk since before 2077. It sounded like.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my
Yep.
kind of background, I met Cyberpunk first. I found it in college. A buddy of mine wanted to run a thing. He was like, "I'm gonna throw a Borg at you," and I was like, "That sounds." I knew Star Trek. I was like, "That sounds awful," and it was terrible. I died, right? And I was hooked ever since. It's like that was so cool. I'd never seen anything like that. So I fell in love with it back in college, and found Shadowrun late. I was a White Wolf kid. I grew up with White Wolf in high school, and White Wolf and Shadowrun had this weird antagonistic like rivalry going on. So like my friends played White Wolf and disliked Shadowrun, and the kids I knew that liked Shadowrun disliked White Wolf. So I just didn't play Shadowrun until college, and by then I'd already been playing Cyberpunk for like 3 years before I got into Shadowrun a little bit. But yeah, I love the genre. I think like sci-fi, especially like dystopian sci-fi, is probably my favorite. If I had to pick a genre that I like, that's it. So, doing this and getting to run Cyberpunk on stream has been a real dream for me. And I've seen y'all's shows, and just like it's just really cool to make this content and be able to explore these things. So, I'm really excited that we get to talk a little bit about how to cyberpunk because it's very different, right? I think I would start off with just a general question. I see we have some questions coming in from the audience. That's awesome. We are going to get to those, as many of them as we can. But I want to start off just as a level set. Cyberpunk is very different than fantasy RPGs generally. You might be able to make a claim that like Witcher is pretty close to Cyberpunk because of how like gruesome it can be, but I think they're very different. And I'd love to hear both of your takes on like how is Cyberpunk different from fantasy? Just for everybody out there who's been playing a lot of D&D or maybe some Pathfinder, and they're interested in this, they've never done it before, and they want to kind of know when I do get into this, what am I going to see on the far end? And maybe Linda, you can start us off.
Okay. In my opinion, I can understand actually you saying that The Witcher is probably the most similar fantasy to
Yes.
cyberpunk as a concept. It's not necessarily the gore. For me, it's the grey morality.
Oh yeah.
D&D, unless you're playing full on murder hobo, which is fun for an evening, but nah. Not long term. It just doesn't do it for me.
Not your bag. Got it.
Not my gig. No. Basically, the odds are that if you're not the hero, you consider yourself a hero. You are people of significance in a world where everybody else, I mean, the peasantry, they are not in any position to accomplish stuff that you and your party can just basically stroll through. Party of groups of goblins raiding the village. The local lord kicking off and proving to be an absolute galloping twonk. That's something that normal people just get crushed by.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the party, are wandering around, they're ranking up their abilities, they're leveling up like crazy, they're wandering around going, oh, yes, we're in the shiny armor now. And they are people of significance. Cyberpunk and Witcher, certainly the way I run it, you're people. You're just people. You're people trying to get by in a system that is not designed to support you and
Yeah.
doesn't really give you it doesn't give you any legs up.
Yeah.
You have to basically bootstrap yourself. You have to make your own space. You've got this situation in Cyberpunk where you bond with your group because those are the people who are going to support you, because you can't rely on the system, any of the systems, whether that be governmental or corporate. You can use them,
Sure.
but be aware that they are not there for your benefit.
Right. And they'll hit you back.
And they will hit you back.
Yeah.
If it's convenient for them, you don't matter to them.
Right.
And as I said, in Witcher, it's very much a similar sort of thing. You know, you are probably not some legendary hero. You are probably just some pleb who's had a bit of training,
Right.
and is now, running a shop,
Right.
trying to make enough money to make it through the next week when you get going.
My favorite thing in Cyberpunk is when my players call the cops. They're like, "Oh, this is a situation I would call the cops for." And I was like, "Cool, you should do that." Prepare to be either disappointed or roped into the problem. Yeah, it's just gonna go bad. So it's very easy as a GM to say, sure, there's all this infrastructure that's not there for you, but you could try and tap into it. And when they show up, they're gonna be there to protect themselves, and your problem is not their problem. And and players learn that, I think, very quickly in Cyberpunk. I think.
Yeah, it's essentially, oh my God, they're robbing the bank across the way. We'll call the police. Yeah, what you're calling is corporate cops who've been hired to protect that building.
Right.
And are in no way, shape or form interested with the 16 hostages they've taken. Because as far as they're concerned, they're not employees, they're not covered by the insurance.
Right, it's the bags of money. It's the bags.
Yeah. No, sorry, mate. We're covering the money, we're covering the infrastructure, and we're covering the building. No, sorry, the meat's not covered.
Yeah.
We've got a supplement, but it's like that. It's basically the structures are there, but they're not there for the player's benefit.
Yeah, so, Simon, how would you take that?
They can be used by
that whole Cyberpunk being different than fantasy.
I think the first thing that I would tell players is don't expect to save the world. That's not going to happen. You, like Linda said, you are insignificant. In a game like Cyberpunk, or in any type of punk game, I feel the theme is to go against the system, to claw your way out of whatever situation you're in, and carve yourself a space where you can live.
Right.
Not even thrive, just live. Because everyone else has to scramble around to just survive. You want to get one step above, but you don't want to get inside the system. You don't want, or like Linda said, you're going to use the system for your own gain, hoping you don't get caught in it. Because the moment they realize you're a problem, well,
they know where you live now, and that address is deleted violently.
You are only worth the trouble it'll be filling out the paperwork later.
Right.
So,
I tell DMs kind of in that same vein of Cyberpunk is one of those games that can be very appealing to kind of go a murder hobo route, or I'm a tortured youth and I'm disconnected from anything. I have zero attachments. I'm just here to kick ass and take names. As GMs, I try and tell GMs don't let them do that. Give them something that their character has to care about, so that you can make the story personal. Right? In the apartment, it's all about the apartment building is going to get blown up. You care about your home, right? You have to act and do so in a way that is supposed to save your home, right? And so, I always try and tell people, and I think that all comes from the Listen Up, You Screwheads book from back in the day, the 2020 supplements, is make the game personal, because with all this oppressive infrastructure and everything kind of making the world bleak, which is a fun element, you have to still give the character something that they care about, something that is,
Mhm.
pure and
Yeah.
good for them that they're going to fight for.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just cash, and I think that's a
Yeah.
short game. I think that's a real
In a
short game.
in a dystopic setting, the player relationships are the non-dystopic bit.
Right.
So whether that's the relationships between the player characters or the
Yeah.
relationships between the player characters and their friends, their
The
contacts,
NPCs
the
around them.
the
Yeah.
NPCs around them, the community they live in, the people they know they have known.
Right.
Those bits aren't dystopic. Those attachments are what makes a good ongoing game, in my humble opinion.
Yeah.
Because the world is so bleak, is so crap. Shiny though it may be,
Yep.
especially if you have the cash, but it doesn't care about you. People care about you,
Right.
and by reinforcing those relationships, that's where you get the players involved and engaged.
Yeah, and I think there's one thing I really want to pull out about how cyberpunk games tend to be different than fantasy games, and this touches on one of the questions we got a little bit about a D&D 5e conversion of the Carbon 2185 game that came out. There was a Kickstarter for it.
Yeah,
So fantasy games, especially like D&D, are a leveling based game where every time you level, you get a bunch of hit points, you get a bunch of powers and all that kind of stuff. But you have this big bag of hit points that you carry around, and you run kind of the same speed as everything else in the game. So if you want to get away, you can just kind of get away. And so because you have these escape route options and you have this big buffer before your character is really suffering, combat I feel like is a ready asset in D&D. Like there's not a lot of downside to starting combat in like traditional fantasy games. And so like the GM would have to like come up with some political fallout, but like just punching a guy and running away, liable.
yeah,
Right? Whereas in Cyberpunk, like PCs can accidentally get real hurt real fast in combat. Like as a GM, you're like, sorry, boo. Like that's a great roll, and ooh, that's a lot of damage. Ooh, that's critical tables. Oh, you've lost the use of your arm. I'm very sorry, but now your character is suffering after the first round of combat, and I think that kind of threat of suffering and even character death is in its own way a way that cyberpunk generally encourages role play, because your first option is generally not combat. If if PC death is like a bother to your characters, and hopefully it is, they're not just throwing away their characters. They're like, okay, we want to negotiate first, or like thief our way into and out. We don't want to shoot our way in and out, because doing so is going to cost us 2 players, right? And so like I think that's another kind of aspect that really changes the vibe of a cyberpunk game versus a fantasy.
Yeah, I've just noticed something go through in chat, which is not a question. It's like a comment from Night in the Woods. I believe in a universe that doesn't care and people who do. That is absolutely that's it. That is the thing. Also, on the fantasy versus sort of cyber or fantasy as cyberpunk, I don't think level-based systems at all work for cyberpunk games. Because you do build up that huge reservoir of personal resources, that in order to feel threatened, it's not just you're someone hires a gang of street thugs to beat the crap out of you outside your favorite bar.
Right.
Suddenly it's got to be, well, okay, we've got snipers equipped with high explosive discarding SIBO rounds
Right.
en masse.
Yeah.
And they'll be blowing through the walls of your building, and then we're going to send a pocket nuke in, and it's just you have to really ramp up and ramp up and ramp up it.
And you
and I just don't think
like,
it works.
Where did this like street leveling ordinance come from? Where has it been this whole game? It's like the GM's like, I have to challenge you, so here comes the armor piercing rounds and the grenades, because that's how tough you are. And I agree, like Cyberpunk is very incremental growth, and a lot of the growth isn't even like skills and all that stuff. It's like, items you acquire and cyberware you put on, and it's like it's very like personal. Like my character has a pop-up gun in their arm, and that has changed so many scenes. And like instead of it being this imbued thing that like I can just cast spells, it's a thing that's attached to you and it can be taken away, right?
Yeah.
Like you can go into the wrong bar, drink the wrong drink, and wake up without your arm. And it's like,
Yep.
yeah, sorry, you pissed off the wrong person. They sent the right people after you, and
Ripodocs were a thing. Yeah.
this whole game is about getting your arm back. Like, let's
Yeah,
do that.
it's a thing. You can't do the life is cheap
No.
that Cyberpunk is about if you have 300 hit points.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, because whatever you do, you hit the party with, that's going to be enough to threaten them and scare them and take them out. You better be doing it in an open area that has no buildings nearby, because otherwise you're going to basically flatten an entire neighborhood to take out the PCs if they get up to that level.
Yeah.
So I far prefer the system, which Red does very well, using the crit system, where anybody with a lucky shot can give you a really, really, really bad day, or end it. Because then that makes people think about their personal safety. It makes people think about their armor, and not just what toys they can get,
Right.
but okay, how is this going to keep me alive?
Right.
Yeah.
And
What
how
is
are
this
my
gonna do
actions
for
going
me?
to get me in trouble?
Yeah, and think about what you do before you act.
Yeah. And I think you're getting into kind of my next topic I wanted to talk about, which was what themes do we like to explore? Because Cyberpunk opens up a lot of different story ideas and themes and that kind of thing that it just really lends itself well to. And I'd love to hear from both of you, like what types of stories do you like to tell, or what themes do you explore? Like that Cyberpunk is uniquely good at delivering to you. Like I think that's something that would be beneficial for folks to hear. Simon, why don't you start us off? Because I
Sure.
picked on Linda first.
That's all right. In my so the themes I usually go for is mostly the like rage against the machine that I call. It's how are you going to not necessarily make your mark upon Night City or whatever, but how are you going to fight the system? What's your gimmick? What makes you punk?
Mm-hmm.
What makes you can be a corpo and try to clean an entire corporation out from the inside, and your thing is I want to work from within the system to try to change things, and then that can lead on to an entire story about how, well, despite your best efforts, the big bad is still going to, you might win on a local level but not anything else. And one other theme that I like is what sets you apart, what makes you a I don't want to say like a minority, but like what makes you different from everybody else.
Right. And
What
what is it that's holding you back from being like
Yeah.
upper crust? Because like
Mhm.
income disparity and like wealth disparity is a central theme of Cyberpunk. There's totally people out there who have infinite money, and then there's the
Mhm.
players and everybody
Yeah.
else who has usually very little money to get started. So yeah, absolutely.
And I feel like if you have infinite money in Cyberpunk, then you can't really be
You're not a punk at that point.
you're not a punk anymore.
Yeah.
Like you've joined the system. Congratulations. You might lead a cushy life, but at what price?
Right.
I think one of the things that I like to also pit my my players up against is gray areas of morality. Like, are you going to pick up someone to help them even though they might get in trouble or give you a whole lot of trouble? They helped in the stream that I'm running right now. The entire story for the like last 6 sessions and even a few more after are about the fact that they once helped someone who tried to help them back in turn and failed.
Neat.
And now they are living with the consequences of their past action.
Yeah.
And so could they have left that person up to dry? maybe, but that's not very nice.
Right.
Mm.
That doesn't sit well with a lot of
Like,
players. A lot
yeah,
of
so
players
you
like, I
want to
want
help,
help.
but
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
I think that consequences are really fun in Cyberpunk. Like just generally, there's so much juice there as a GM to be like, cool, you did this thing that was real nice, but there's a downside. Now the local politicians hate you because you're the local hero, or whatever. You know, like there's just so many good consequences you can put in there. What about you, Linda? Like what kind of themes do you explore?
I am all about making it personal. Whether that be a mission that ties into a player's previous actions or their personality, or just things that I know they've got floating around in the back of their head that they have, in their head, that what their character has done previously. I like to tap into that. Also, my villains are people.
Yeah.
Nobody is evil in their own head.
Yeah.
Everybody is doing what they see as good. It's just who they're doing good for is the different angle. And I always try and write stuff where if you take one step to the left, the antagonist would be the hero of the series. And that way, I think you get a convincing villain rather than someone who's just some ravening, I'm going to Bond villain, which is really not what. So it doesn't really play into Cyberpunk at all.
And that really gets to that gray morality of like, well, if
Yeah.
we look at it from their perspective, like they are the good
Exactly.
person here, and we're
Yeah.
the bad people. It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's the point of this. You are fighting for your
Yeah.
corner of the pie, and that means you've got to make some gray choices.
Also, when consequences happen, it can be as a result of failure or success. Consequences for failure, people are usually prepped for. They're going, okay, shit, all right, fine. We've annoyed the local crime bosses in this area. Okay, we're not going there until we can do something to assuage them. Nice box of chocks, flowers, head of their biggest enemy on the plate, something along those lines. But the consequences of success, suddenly tall poppy syndrome comes into play. And even if it's only a fleeting success, suddenly you're the big dog in the neighborhood. And you're going to have somebody younger, somebody stupid possibly, going, right, well, in order to make a name for myself, I'm going to take them.
Right.
I'm going to come at them. You make a big score, which, you may have earmarked to buy a load of skimweave and basically do up your apartment building. That would be great. Unfortunately, some hacker goes, right, we've heard they've come into some cash. Okay. And suddenly someone's done a run on you.
Yeah.
And your account's empty.
Yeah.
And all that's left is, three laughing bumblebees going,
That's their like call sign. Yeah, like
yeah.
What is it? I think that also came from the Screwhead's book of like hit your players. Don't let them like the world is challenging and there's always more crabs trying to pull them back down into the pot. And there's always another crew that's jealous or that wants what they've got, and like you can hit them. Like that is a it's part of the kind of ethos of the world that everybody's out for themselves a little bit, and it's tough to have like good allies that last forever because at some point they will want what you have.
Also, if you've built up alliances and good web of contacts, unfortunately, people will get to know that. And so that becomes your weak point.
Right.
And while you yourselves may have built up, enough of an armory to fight off a small battle, or you're wandering around in enough armor to shrug off your average SMG without blinking, but the rocker who runs the local jazz bar, not so much.
Right.
The ex-corp who's now running a store down the road who fences exotic and unusual gear
For
the discerning customer. Again, they don't have that level of protection, and suddenly those people who you've come to rely on, you've come to know, they're your weak spot. and you can just go straight in through that crack, and suddenly that's personal.
Yeah.
They've hit us where it hurts.
Yeah, one of the other things I really like in keeping it personal is, and there was a question around humanity loss, is around like, in my game, one of the PCs died, and her brother, who was originally I'm not going to do any cybernetics, I'm not going to ever do that for myself. I'm a gun arm, but I'm going to be like all flesh. Had a huge, like, because of the suffering that character suffered, made a huge change of heart. It's like, I'm never going to let that happen again. I'm going to arm up, cyber up, so that somebody I love and care for will never die around me again, right? And went off and got a lot of cybernetics, and now is coming back with humanity issues because they've cybered up so much that they're like really low empathy, and it's a huge character change, right? Because it was that's one of the things I like about Cyberpunk is that it allows characters to suffer without dying sometimes. It allows characters to suffer, and then for them to respond to that suffering is in very interesting ways. And like a big game session will change who that character is going forward. They're never going to make that mistake again. They're never going to trust this person again. And they're never, they start to come up with these rules about themselves. And now, like, your plot, your trajectory is all changed. And at least for me, I'm really enjoying the exploration of loss of humanity, because, like, he has made himself a killing machine and kind of sees himself as an attack dog now, and that's dehumanizing, right? And that's a fun topic to explore at the right table. Not every table can handle that, but like, it's been really nice exploring loss of humanity for this character who had a kind of rational response to losing a loved one. It's like, I will never let that happen again, and I'm willing to sell my soul to make sure that doesn't happen again, right? And I think that gets into the gray morality stuff, that gets into the keeping it personal stuff, is like, you want that. You want your players to, like, have a visceral response to something, make a big change, and for that change to be realized. And there's costs associated with that, and there's additional problems associated with that. It's really good, I think. And to answer the question on how do we handle humanity loss, I basically tell my players, if you go to 0, I take your character. If you go low, just try your best to act that. Nobody can act insane. I don't want insanity. I just want people who are emotionally a little bit more muted. And you can get as muted as you like, but don't try and be an insane person, because it's probably not going to go over well. Just have less and less empathy. And if you ever get to 0, I take the character sheet, and that person's still alive, but they're gone. They're cyberpsych with them. It's kind of how I handle that.
I do like that there are ways of getting therapy to offset the cyberware implants, especially on things like the big full body changes. So the things like, if you do a complete gender change, that does not come with a concomitant humanity loss, because factored into the cost of the whole conversion is things like the therapy that will allow you to make the adjustment to using the new setup without damaging your personal empathy, the way you interact with the world. I think that is I think that's a brilliant way of handling it. It's not an automatic. But the thing is, if someone's getting their cyberware done fast and dirty because, oh, crap, we need this done now, then you haven't got time for the extra work and the extra therapy at the time. And they're going to take an empathy hit there. They go the humanity loss, and that then becomes a balancing act as to how do you do this so that you don't then become the thing you're trying to avoid hitting your friends.
It's to chime in a bit about like humanity loss and how we do it. How I see it is, basically, once you start getting into your head that people are just made of replaceable parts, what's the harm in cutting off someone's arm?
Right.
They can buy a new one.
Yeah.
Like what's so, and that's where your empathy becomes lower and lower because you start seeing people as not people. You start seeing them as these like parts, and you're just it. I can shoot someone if I don't like them. It's a bullet wound. They'll go to the hospital, get it stitched up, and
Yeah.
that's it. Like, yeah, they'll be stuck with debt for the rest of their lives.
Sure they were dead, but trauma team showed up and they're
Yeah,
alive
and
now, and they've got like 2 lifetimes worth of debt. I don't care. They're still alive though.
yeah,
Like they made
and
it.
that's a low empathy character.
Yeah.
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 Someone who says, and with the Cyberpunk Red edition of like any surgery, any implants that are like necessary for a character's sense of self to be realized, like gender affirming surgery and all that, you don't lose empathy because you needed that to be yourself.
Same with like prosthetics. Like if you lost an
Yeah.
arm, you can just have a cyber arm and there's no
Yeah.
human loss.
And you're not going to think that you're a bag of parts because it's no. I lost mine. I want it back. The thing is if you say I lost an arm, I want a rocket launcher
Right.
instead.
I want to become a killing machine. That's the
Yeah.
value loss. Yeah.
And that's the beginning of the slope. Why do you want a rocket launcher in your arm?
Right. Yeah.
Why would any like regular person want to be a walking killing machine?
And I think media can help us see low empathy characters that are still likable, right? Like if you go and watch the show The Expanse, there's this character Amos. He is a low empathy character. He is willing to kill kind of at any time. But he's very likable because he's figured out a way to still exist in the world without being the monster that he knows he could be, right? Heat, Tom Sizemore's character in Heat is another, for me, is a great example of like a low empathy character. If I ever have a player who's going low on empathy and they're like, how do I do this? I say, go watch The Expanse, go watch Heat, go watch some other movies with like the hitter guy, and just watch how that person is still a member of the group, still loyal, still productive, and a usable character. Because I think that's the danger. People will go low humanity and then they become a liability. And it's like, you don't have to be a liability. Just augment how you approach a situation.
And an example of a character like that, again, media, is Helena from Orphan Black, who has a result of extreme childhood trauma and being raised in a very traumatic environment, just cannot relate to people. She is, when she first turns up, she is completely detached, and she is a hired killer. She is a trained killer. But the way she becomes functional within the context of the series and within the context of the family group, for want of a better term, is that she finds connections with the other characters. So while she doesn't care about people in general, she cares about these people. She cares about her friends, and that circle kind of starts to expand a little. And that is a low empathy character who, she doesn't have the automatic ability to connect with people. She doesn't quite understand why she should. But when she sees examples of it around her, and she can do it deliberately, she can do it consciously, but she can't do it automatically. And she's a really, really she's one of my favorite characters in the series. I'm tragic, but no, she's, because she has the most interesting journey. Literally turns up mass murderer. How do you then segue that into a usable character within the group? And that's something that, as character backgrounds, can be interesting as well as what players come up with.
I think before we get out of themes, I did want to touch on one of the cool questions that was in there. Zonjas asked, what kind of unique atmospheric elements do you build into your sessions to introduce players to the world of Cyberpunk, right? So how do you flesh out the world of Cyberpunk within your player base? It goes on to say, I've been struggling to kind of imbue that in there to make the PCs understand the atmosphere. I'll start this one off just because I think I'll do that. Anyways, I borrow a lot from movies. I borrow a ton from movies. There's an old black and white movie that I reference a lot called Metropolis. You don't even need to watch the whole thing. Just like go and find Metropolis, the old like 1930s, 1940s thing. It's black and white, and it is an oppressive world. Everybody is a machine, basically. And then I also borrow from, like, of course, Blade Runner and all that kind of stuff as well.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the more contemporary ones. But the way I introduce that stuff into a game is I will have my players walk through a factory, and I will describe how all the workers are staring up at a monitor, waiting for numbers to flash on a screen. There's no communication, there's no interaction between them, and they're just waiting for the big machine to tell them what to do. And things like that. Like, I'll just describe that as they move through, and then the players are like, that's really creepy, dude. I don't like that at all. It's like, yeah, but that's, that's the world. And then you move forward, and they get this sense of, okay, this place kind of is crappy, right? And anytime my players go into Night City, I've always got to have something bad. I've always got to have something that is like, to our sensibilities here in 2020 America or the world, wherever you live, it has to be bad by your group's sensibilities. And I've always got to have something every time they go into Night City, like drones harassing a family, something that just makes people go, I kind of hate this place. And it's like, yeah, you're kind of supposed to hate the place. Anything else that y'all do from an environmental perspective?
I do like giving people a watch list when I'm running anything. I like to try and find things that have the right flavor and set people off to either read, watch, whatever. Just not in a, it's going to be exactly like this, but just in a, this has the right texture to it. So when because I'm prepping a game of Red, but it's going to be a little way down the rotation for me. And I'm going to be asking people to seek out Strange Days,
Oh, yeah.
the Ralph Fiennes film, which is a brilliant thing. And especially if you're dealing with brain dance, hello. It basically tackles that. It looks at perception, your perception of reality, and the way that can be commodified. And it's a very, very good, very tight little cyberpunk story. Johnny Mnemonic, not bad at all. Basically, if people want to read Gibson, that is ideal for me.
Just go read some Gibson, some Neil Stephenson,
exactly.
early days, like Diamond Age. Yeah.
Oh god, yes. Virtual Light is my go-to. I think for accessibility for Gibson, because that really comes at things from the lower end of society. Your protagonists are very much people who have been trumped on. They have been crapped upon. They are scraping a living right at the edge of society, and they work from there. And that's how the forces above them affect their lives.
Yeah, this is all my Gibson right there. All my
yeah.
Gibson, all my Neil Stephenson. Yeah, like that's 100%.
Yeah. Okay. Ebooks are incredibly useful. My flat is only so big.
I get you.
But yes, I've got Snow Crash. I've got some Cryptonomicon. I've got the Diamond Age.
Yeah.
I look forward to the series of
All Tomorrow's Parties. All Tomorrow's Parties is so good. Peripheral, the new Gibson line, Peripheral, where like
I need to read those.
Oh, it's so cool. Like it really fits in well with Red. There's this concept of the jackpot, where everybody has survived the jackpot, and the jackpot was basically a time of huge turmoil. Lots of people died. The time of the Red, right? Lots of people are dead, and if you're still alive, you won the jackpot. Your life sucks, but you won the jackpot.
Yeah.
So I've cribbed that a bit.
Yeah. The other thing that I do for flavor is the world I run in. My stuff is cyberpunk is very related to noir. It's noir with added neon in many ways. So things like the Philip Marlowe stuff, any of your classic detective fiction. It is that kind of the feeling there of you're never quite going to get your head above water. You're never quite going to get ahead, even when things are going well. the best thing you can hope for is not to drown today. And that's something that I always, when I'm writing something like this, I will go heavily into, I'll start reading while I'll start having audiobooks on, I'll start having movies on in the background as wallpaper, really to put my head in that space. And that is a great thing for building the atmosphere, the same sort of atmosphere that works so well in cyberpunk games. Because technology aside, it leaves you victimized, but not completely helpless. You're almost able to make a difference. And that's as far as you can push it.
And the genre does borrow a lot from film noir. Like, it really does borrow a lot. I love that. I love that note. So everybody go watch like Maltese Falcon and all the old film noir detective stories with Humphrey Bogart and all that kind of stuff. Because it's like you could just add cybernetics to that and some net running, and it's like we're good. That's my game right there. So I mean, how do you feel about what kind of, how do you imbue your world with cybernetic themes so that the players get a sense for where they are?
I suck at doing that.
No, dude. No.
Yes.
When you had your player doing the trauma team and he went in and like it was like his intro and like there are all these bodies everywhere and it's like, who do you pick to save? Like, dude.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, it's so the part where I fail at is to describe what you could say like background events, things happening all around you to just remind you that you're in Night City, but you're not just anywhere in Night City. Like you're in the combat zone, for example.
Yeah.
I'll describe what I feel like the combat zone is, but I feel like what I describe is still missing that little oomph. So what I do to palliate to that is because we use Roll20 for the game, but you talked about something earlier, David, before we started that I'm probably going to start using now, because it's essentially what I've been using Roll20 for, and is I create a bunch of folders with reference images for all of the NPCs, all of the even important places. Or when we did, because we started the campaign with the apartment, I have a document, and I kid you not, it's not that long. It's like 2 pages long of who lives in the building. We sat down with all the players, and together we came up with a bunch of people that would live in that apartment building.
Nice. Yeah.
Who are they? What do they do? What do they look like? What's their life like?
Right.
When did they move in?
Are they
Nice.
OG? Are they new timers? Yeah.
They're mostly, so some of them are from the adventure, like Gina and her pets. But we added, for example, Barry Showalter, the guy who's been Braindance. He plays a bowling game on Braindance, and he's been doing it for so long that it's starting to bleed into his life, and he doesn't realize that well that like it's not real. He's not this like bowling superstar,
Right.
and because of his life on Braindance, he's been neglecting to take care of his old mother who lives with him.
Nice.
And it's like
all
to
that
show like a type
backstory.
of addiction.
All that backstory is so good. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Addiction is so like, do not be afraid of like people coping in very unhealthy ways.
Oh yes.
Like that's a thing that people do. They just go and get addicted because their life sucks. And like that can be a thing in your game. It's safe. It's okay.
Yeah. The apartment. Sorry, the apartment. Just talking about the characters there, because when I ran it, a lot of the players weren't familiar with the concepts. So I let them. I had a party, of course. It opens with a party, opens with a barbecue. So that party went on for quite a long time, as people defined the other characters in the block by their interactions at the party. So there's a rocker in there. By the time the party was over, we decided he was retired, a goth,
Yes.
quite old, still dressed like he was 18.
Perfect.
And so now we've gone from this rocker boy. We've got this aging goth Sisters of Mercy dressing guy.
Yeah.
And everybody just kind of wanted to adopt him, but so I let them sort of build up those characters by their own interactions with them, and played off how they responded. So that was just nice for atmosphere.
And
Gets to know them.
one last point I want to make about atmosphere for everybody out there. Go and Google brutalist architecture. Brutalism is I come from Dallas. I'm originally from Dallas, Texas. Dallas, Texas City Hall is this like flat side with a big like lean to it. That's brutalism, right? RoboCop was filmed in Dallas City Hall. The police station was actually Dallas City Hall. Go and Google brutalist architecture. Go and download all of the examples you can find of brutalist architecture. You need a firehouse. I used one. It looks like a fortress. It looks like it's designed to shoot down Borg on their way to the firehouse. It looks imposing, right? So just find yourself some brutalist architecture and be like, this is the building you guys are going into. And like, oh my God, it's a fortress. And it's like, yeah, that's cool. So go look up that architecture and use the heck out of it.
1960s tower blocks for the UK. If you're in the UK, look at anything that was built as social housing in about the 1960s when they had no idea of what psychology was.
Yeah, yeah, and of course look at Kulon. What is it? The walled city in
Wulong.
Yeah.
Is it? No, it's Kowloon. Something like that.
Kowloon.
Yeah, the walled city.
Walled City. Yeah.
Look
Oh
at Kowloon.
God, that place. Yes.
Yeah. Look up favelas in Brazil, right, where people have just like built shacks on top of shacks up a hill.
Yeah, it's just layered.
Like
the opening to The Incredible Hulk.
Yes.
The Edward Norton one is set in Brazil. If you watch none of the rest of the film, and I like the film, so bite me. I know it's not necessarily loved, but the opening to that is set in the favelas, and you start with a shot all the way up the mountainside, and there's just layers of construction. Of places on top of each other, of round and in and intermeshed with each other, and it's an incredible look, and it's terrifying to think that that's how some people have to live.
Yeah, and if you want to send home in your cyberpunk game that people are doing whatever they got to do to survive, you show them pictures of stuff like that, where it's like, look, there is a hill outside of your town that looks exactly like this, because people, no matter what their stripe is, they will do whatever they got to do to survive for them and their family and their loved ones, and so like just show them examples of that. And then brutalism. It's like just put the two of them next to each other and boom, that's a cyberpunk street. Fortress next to Shack Hill. Problem. So I think I'd like to jump into, we've got about 30 minutes left. I'd like to get into the tools that you all like to use. And this could be like what you use to set up your game, or just tools that you've kind of gathered to you that have really helped you run a cyberpunk game. And Linda, maybe you could start off with something if you've got any kind of tools that you have to use.
It's an odd one because I run so many different games. It's not stuff that's explicitly for cyberpunk, but I do things like, at the moment, I'm because of the way we have to play games, because people have the temerity to not live all together. We've been on virtual tabletops for years before we started streaming, in many ways. So I've gone on to fantasy rounds and making extensive use of that. Not full use because I'm still digging around as to its capabilities, but I'm finding that is an extremely useful tool for easy sharing of images, keeping track of who's doing what where. The players can handle their own characters, but also I've got instant access to them, so if I want to do anything to, with, or for them, I can do that live and they can see the impact straight away. Also, I mean, the online die rollers are 10 a penny, but it's not terrible. And although it hates certain members of my group, go figure. And also extensions like that, which I've been digging into. You've got the player agency extension to Fantasy Grounds, which is very much it's designed for investigations. It's designed so the players can keep notes, and instead of just the normal Fantasy Grounds note system, all the players can collaborate on a page of clue notes. So it's their thoughts as they've come across stuff.
neat.
They can collaborate. They can put their own ideas into it. So that's all of them together instead of everybody keeping track of their own odds and sods.
Yeah, it's nice to combine
And that
everything.
that's something I'm hoping will get used a lot more, because I think that's a really, really good way of encouraging people to work together and encouraging teamwork,
I think I have a tool for you
because that's the thing.
that might like amp that up a little bit. Well, Simon,
That's cool.
I'd love to hear what you have to say, but I as you're talking about sharing notes and all that kind of stuff, there's this thing that I'd love to tell you about in a little bit.
Oh, go for it.
Yeah.
That's-
But Simon, what do you use? How do you like run your Cyberpunk game, or what tools do you make?
So
use
I've used two things for Cyberpunk. One, I had a document prepped up with 10 questions. You've probably seen some of them in like the interview videos on YouTube. So I asked where is it? Yeah. So I asked 10 questions to my players that would essentially sort of get them into the game's mindset. Not just Cyberpunk, but like maybe like cement them in like what the game is going to be talking about. What themes are we going to touch a bit more than others? So that was a thing that helped create their background. The other thing that I did,
Do you have an example of that we could like link to
yes,
or
definitely.
something?
Oh boy, it's I can copy paste all 10 questions in chat if you
Oh, that'd
want.
be awesome. That'd be kind of cool. Yeah.
Go for it.
So if chat whoops, it's a character limit of 500. So give me 2 seconds. I'll post the first 5 questions.
There you go.
Those are the first 5,
Beautiful.
and those are the next 5.
Awesome.
There we go. And
Beautiful, thank you.
for Discord,
I'm
I'll
just
put
gonna,
it here.
Oh, thank you so much for copying that.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
was like, I'm just
copy
gonna
paste it.
take that real quick.
And I'll leave it in the Discord chat so you have access to them. And another thing that I did is I made up a playlist of music that, and I've linked it in chat, that not only informs what Cyberpunk is. It's a lot of like there's Vangelis in there, because of course there is. It's also the music I was listening to prepping for the game, but also I like through either the themes of these songs or maybe the beats or sometimes even the video, the music video of it. It would inform you as to like what the tone of the game is going to be about.
Yeah.
And and I don't know if that can mesh with a question from the viewers. How do you ease new players into Cyberpunk?
Yeah. A
Into the
playlist is a
genre?
big part of that for sure.
Yeah. Another thing, I didn't do it not enough with my players, but I feel like if I had someone who was completely new to Cyberpunk, I would say take something that you think really sucks about your life, your condition, either like social, physical, or what have you, economical, and crank it up to 11.
Yeah.
That's your character.
Yeah.
That's like one thing. Oh, I hate my job. It's soul draining. I'm underpaid. Okay, well, you're so underpaid that your character has to live in a cardboard box.
Yeah, and actually has to pay to keep their job or whatever.
Yeah, that's it. Like it's you lose money because you have to get to work.
Yeah.
And that is already like a beginning of a dystopia right there.
Yeah.
Actually, right now I would mostly just show them videos of Portland.
Oh yeah. I just had a salutary reminder. One thing I do use as a tool when I'm writing scenarios to make sure that everything hangs together is I use clue chains. I pull together clue chains and clue networks. because that's an excellent way of making people learn about the world around them.
Do you have
Because
I would love to see a write up on a clue chain, a clue network. Is there?
I don't have them finalized for human consumption yet. I have them in Drut safe notes. However, I'm doing them as blog posts.
Oh,
So
awesome.
when I do that, I'm going to I'll bung it up and I'll shoot you a copy if that's okay.
Yeah, totally. I mean,
Um,
link it in here. I'll toss it in the
yeah,
chat just so people can like tune into
cool.
your blog and be ready
Yeah,
for that. Like that'd be awesome.
yeah, yeah. When it's, as I said, when it's slightly more useful,
Yeah, yeah. When I get you,
usable
work
for
in progress
humans.
is a thing.
Yeah, it's notes to self. But what they do is when I'm working up an investigation, and as I said, so much of cyberpunk comes down to detective work in some way, shape, or form. And I work out, okay, who's got this information? Who has this information if the players muck up this interaction? Who does this person know who might be able to provide some of that information? And you work out a social web, and that expands out from one contact who will know maybe two people, and they'll know
Mhm.
two people, and they'll know two people. And suddenly you've gone from talking to, say, the bartender
Right.
to the two guys that he happens to know who might be involved in this situation. But then one of them, he knows that his cousin runs with a gang who might be able to help you out with that aspect. And it builds the world around them. And that is a really easy way of building a community
Yeah.
and building a neighborhood, building an area, and getting people to look at of the NPCs as people instead of just person behind bar.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
also
Yeah.
give everyone names. Always give everybody names. Be ready to name anyone who's there.
Have a
Whether
name
you've got
sheet.
that page
Something.
of baby names up, pick half a dozen appropriate national origins,
Yeah.
and be ready to mix and match like a bastard, and
In
but
Cyberpunk, you
name
can do
everybody.
in Cyberpunk you can do like street handles, right? And so
Yeah,
Yep.
I'll just look
exactly.
around my room and like, kid you not, there's a
Yes.
nail up here, and I needed to name a kid, and I was like, his name is Nailhead, and like everyone's
Yeah,
like, this kid is weird. What? Who comes up with that name? I was like, oh, just I picked an object and I named a kid after it. Like that's how you do it.
who's into Hellraiser? We don't know.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's name everybody, and like I said, the social network and the clue chains. Those are two tools that I find incredibly useful for me and for the players.
Yeah, that's awesome. And also on that front, just like as a GM note for folks, if your players are putting real effort into an investigation, let them find the next, like, they've got to find the next clue. So, like, I find oftentimes people will bury important plot behind a die roll. Maybe don't do that, right? Maybe the die roll influences how they find the plot, the super important plot thing that
Yeah,
you've buried. But, like, if the game can't progress without them finding this thing, they've got to
yeah.
have some way of finding it, even if they don't roll well.
Yeah.
It's
That
just a thing.
a scenario I have just finished writing um, had an element which is kind of essential to lead them on to the next part of the scenario. And I looked at it and I thought, you know what, I could stick it behind an awareness check. I could, put it behind skills. Alternatively, they're in the right place. All it's literally got to do is we are having a look around.
Yeah.
It's not hard to find.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But if I'd hidden that behind a paywall of a skill check and they'd cocked that up,
Because they will.
Mhm.
because dice know,
Yeah.
um, you just it could completely bring everything to a grinding halt. And suddenly the GM's going, okay, how am I actually going to work around this and take it from there? So yeah, anything that's essential and can only be found in one place, don't make them roll.
Yeah.
Mm.
So
Absolutely.
so I have two tools that I use whenever I start a game, and part of it is that my show is open access, like people can just come in, and whenever we're starting up a new game, I just ask, hey, who wants to play in a game? And a lot of times I'm playing with strangers. So like our Cyberpunk game, almost half of the cast is complete strangers to me when they got started.
Mm.
Like one guy's a trucker, He was like, "Hey, I want to play with you." It's like, "Cool, awesome, whatever, let's do this," you know. And then other people were just kind of coming in from other communities, and so I use it's the Monty Cook questionnaire that
Yeah.
the kind of survey about like what are you okay with, what are you not okay with, and that kind of thing. I modified that for Cyberpunk. It's a lot of questions, quite frankly, but it was like a way for me to ask a bunch of questions of somebody I don't really know and begin to have that conversation with them. So I don't just use the sheet. I'll link it for everybody. It's a Google Doc. It's actually a Google form that you can copy to your drive and make your own changes and do all that stuff you need to do. It has like questions in there around like player agency, because brain dance, memory hacking, mind control, like all that's in Cyberpunk. Do your players dig on that or don't they? You kind of need to know that before you say, well, remember you had that really good night and your character woke up with a bunch of blood on them.
Yeah.
And like 2 warrants for their arrest. Like, is a player cool with that or no? You got to know that.
You guys, yeah.
before you
Do you
do it.
guys make use? Do you guys make use of Session Zero?
Yes.
Because I
Yes.
consider that essential.
Yes.
A lot of what is in the survey, I tend not to necessarily do checkboxes, but what I do is, I absolutely love that Monty Cook, the original one. I think it covers pretty much everything.
It's got a great
I like
guidepost.
to talk.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I like to talk to people and get a feel for not just the specifics on the checkbox, but get a feel for generally how they feel about certain subjects.
Right.
Where they stand, where, is this a complete no? There are some things that, okay, you will never encounter in one of my scenarios. For example, you will never encounter sexual assault
Same.
in one of my scenarios. Not certainly not on a PC and not on an NPC. There may be in history. It may have been it happened, but you will never encounter as part of an ongoing plot a sexual assault, because that's just
a line. You've
that's
lined
just a
that
line
off.
for me.
Just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's something that I can let the new players go, no, that's, we won't be doing that, which means, of course, your player characters will not be doing that
Or be victim to it.
or be victim to it. Yeah. So that is one of the rules I set.
Yeah.
But then by talking to people, by getting them into conversation, especially getting them into conversation with each other as they build their characters, that really helps, I think, them to see who the other players are, who the other player characters are. Because, yeah, we've started and we've kind of gone with, until somebody pops up on VC and I see their face on the chat window, I really have no idea who they are.
Right. Right.
They've been they've been a comment in chat.
Right.
They've been on the Discord.
Right.
I do not know this person.
You got to meet them and have a rapport. And
Exactly.
we're kind of dancing around this topic, and there's a question in the chat about it. Veils and lines. So you and I just talked about having lines in the game. We don't have that. And just so everybody in the, I feel like all of us use veils and lines, right?
Yeah.
And we all use X card. I've seen you all mention it before.
Yeah, whether it's a literal or whether it's just a can we not.
Right. Right.
If any, that oddly enough, that phrase "can we not" is okay. Now we'll be going that way.
Yeah, and so everybody, just so everybody knows what those are, veils and lines is a concept of player safety, where you can say there are things that we veil off in the game, and what that means is we won't do a whole scene about it, but we can acknowledge that it happens in the game. Things like, my player's going to go get laid tonight. Okay, great. Let's veil that off. We agree that happens, but we don't need to like do the scene. Right? Like,
No.
that's not fun. But
I don't want to describe
exactly.
sleeping with my.
Yeah. And what if it's 2 PCs and they act? Oh my god. Ugh.
No.
Yeah. So
we did that. We did that in Witcher. The first scenario, first session of Witcher. Basically, an NPC started chatting to one of the PCs, and it was one of those. They chatted and then naturally wandered off upstairs, and it was kind of a cut to the door and the burning fire, and that's it.
Yeah, that's
we know
a
what they did.
Right.
They know what they did.
Right. That's a veil. We don't have to enact a whole scene. A line is more so. It's basically, this does not happen in the game. And so like one of my players in the survey, I love doing the survey because I learn things and my players learn things about themselves sometimes. One of them is like, actually, harm against animals, I hate. If we are in a game where dogs are getting hurt, I'm checked out. I don't want to play this game anymore. I was like, okay, that's a hard line. Even guard dogs, they're off limits. They never get hurt, right? And that means I have to be careful with how I use animals in the game. But I'm happy to take that on as a GM to make it so that all of my players are comfortable with the game that they're playing, because harm to animals is a hard line for them. For me, I'm kind of a new dad. Harm to kids is now a line. I didn't have that line before, but now I do. And it's like, I just can't handle it. Like, I'm immediately like dad mode, and it's like, I'm out of character at that point, and I'm not playing the game. So that's a line for me. And just finding those lines, these are things that do not happen in this game, is important. So veils and lines, super helpful tool. They're described all over the net.
Yeah.
The other one is X card, and that's could we not, right? So a scene begins, and someone sees where it's going, and is like, I'm going to hate this. Maybe we talked about it and somebody's forgotten, or maybe we never talked about it, but I need to X out on this one and just be like, let's just skip this whole scene. And X cards is really helpful. I've had X cards used in games I'm on. Very helpful as a GM, because you don't know. You're just marching into a scene, and somebody's like, oh, I'm uncomfortable with mental health issues for elderly. Okay, we never asked that question. We never cleared that one. So skip through the scene, moving on. Right.
And it's sometimes something that might not have been a problem before, but something happened in your life outside of the game recently, and you're like, you know what, this week I don't feel like talking about this. Like, I just no.
Yeah, and like a really big one of that, folks, infidelity, drug use, stuff like that like suddenly impacts somebody's life, or like big diseases suddenly is in your life. You don't want to play that in a game all of a sudden. And you were fine with it a year ago, but now you're not, and that's okay. Right, so you X card or say, hey, can we not? And then everybody at the table just makes an adjustment, right? And that means that everybody can still have fun, and that's the idea of those rules.
Scared, not scarred, is my personal motto for how the players should feel. I'm not at the table to traumatize anyone.
Right.
I've seen people run stuff like that.
Yeah.
I've watched it at cons and things, and it's kind of, what even are you trying to do? Or you're just upsetting people. Now stop it.
Yeah. It's a whole thing, and like the players and GMs out there that really want to tackle those hard subjects, and they're like, no, this is not off limits. I'm eagerly interested in all that, and your whole group is eagerly interested in all that. Awesome, do your thing.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I'm not saying that anybody should have the same lines I have or anything like that. Like, just know what they are and do them, and be good with each other. So the other tool I wanted to mention, and this gets to your like shared notes, Linda, is I use a program called Legend Keeper, which is in beta right now, and it is so good. I can get you a copy.
That'd be cool, actually. Yes.
Yeah. And actually, once I get you I can get you one too. Sorry. I can get you guys copies. Just send me your emails, and I'll hook you up.
Sure. That it was the thing I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
That I use Roll24 when you spoke about Legend Keeper before the stream.
Yeah.
I went on the website and I was like, oh.
Yeah, so here, if one of the mods could put legendkeeper.com in the chat, it is a world building tool by trade. You can have maps nested within maps, nested within maps. So if you want to know Night City, and then the neighborhood, and then the building, and then the top floor, second floor, third floor, subfloors, all of those could have maps, right? Yep. And then you put pins on them to say that this is where the broken sump pump is, and this is where this is, and this is where that is. And then it has a whole wiki thing. And you, as a GM, can share access to your projects with other players. They can add their own pins if you let them. They can make their own wiki articles if you let them. And they can share information with one another. In my Cyberpunk game, it has become almost like a pseudo play-by-post space between sessions, and it's where I'm learning that one of my players is starting a drug habit because of all of the trauma he has experienced in the game. And
I really, really hope you bring one of your PCs, because otherwise I'm worried about your games.
No, you're right. No, my PCs. You're right. Wrong terminology there. Yeah, but as a GM, it's been very helpful to give them a space where they can write their notes, and I can read them, all the other players can read them, and we can all have like this between game space where we get to contribute things. And It has areas where I can wall off stuff that only I know, articles or parts of articles that only I know, and I can choose when my players get to see them. So it becomes not just a world building tool, but a campaign tracking tool. And we use it now for all of our stuff. I think we've got like 8 games running in Legend Keeper now. So I'll get you guys invites, the 2 of you invites. You can invite up to 50 people to your stuff. And then those people can make their own projects and invite up to 50 people. So this could be something that, it's all free right now because it's all beta. And they're really cool. They're based out of Texas. And I'll get you stuff because it's so powerful. So those are my tools. Those are my tools.
Someone posted a question that I replied very quickly in chat. If a core plot scene gets X-carded, what advice do we have for moving on?
Yeah.
I know this panel isn't about like safety or anything, but I'll just, if you don't mind, repeat what I wrote in chat very quickly.
Please do.
The easiest, not necessarily the best, the easiest is to fade to black, move on to the next scene. Whatever the players had to find in that scene, they found it, just like in a movie or a TV show. It fades to black, and then we're continuing way later, and we do not acknowledge this happened. It's the easiest, not the best. The best is to sit down and I normally do that. We'll ask the person who played the X card, what would you want to have happen?
Right.
Not to put them on the spot or anything, but you're uncomfortable. I'm sorry I made you feel uncomfortable because of that. What would you rather happen? And sometimes the player is just going to say, you know what? I'm just not comfortable with that description. Everything else can happen, but just don't mention like this one thing. All right, you know what? Next time, this is not going to happen. We're going to keep playing or take a break, decompress.
Yeah.
Cyberpunk
You have to talk about it.
Cyberpunk specifically is a dangerous game. The PCs can die, sure, but also you can trod over a lot of really sensitive topics. And so I think Chad is really good on this. Wintergreen UK, really great note there. Like, respect that what they're saying is very real to them, right? Like, acknowledge their truth, and then say, okay, this scene is obviously done, but what is the right step forward? Like, I've asked my players, should we just stop playing? Like, is this so bad that the game itself needs to stop, the session needs to stop, or just the scene? Because I need to know the scope of what damage has just been done. And hopefully we've stopped before big damage, but like, it can happen, and that needs to be okay. It needs to be okay for anybody to pump the brakes. And there's actually, sorry, I didn't mean to bust everybody's ears again. There's actually a really good augment to the X card system, and that's the buddy system. That someone can say, hey, will you X card for me? I'm not comfortable being the one to stop the game. And a buddy will say, hey, we've got an X card up. I think we need to end this scene. It's like, okay, cool. Scene is over. Let's all take a quick break. I'll go get a drink. Bio. Let's decompress for a second. Come back. If you're on stream, just go to break. Right? Hey, we're gonna go to a break.
Don't forget to take a break, even if you're on stream. It's not a bad thing. It's the more we're going to use it, the more people are going to see that it's normal.
Yeah.
And you're not trying like the show must go on. No, fuck it. Like, you're not going to scar your players.
Right.
For the sake of a Twitch stream.
For 20 extra views or whatever. Yeah, exactly. So
I want 20 views, my God. No, I want to keep my players for future reference.
Right.
I want to keep them, and I don't want them to go to sit through steaming through an entire session, feeling that they couldn't say anything, and then just bugger off and never turn up again. That's horrible. That is an absolutely awful thing to have happen. If somebody X cards or does no, can we not in this? Then I would retcon. I would say, okay, right, fine. This has not happened. Please tell me what is, or let me know what the problem is. Not oh my God, what is your problem? Right. Tell me where I've gone wrong, and how would you prefer we handle this? And then, it's a you rewind, and that's how the scene happened.
I like the rewind sound. Yeah.
But going for a break, going for a bio break, calling okay, right, we're going to have a quick chat.
Yeah.
Everyone go off and get a drink.
Yeah.
And we'll be back in 5, and taking it from there, making people not feel that they have to explain themselves on stream.
No,
And like, I think a lot of the audience probably doesn't even stream, but make them feel like they don't have to explain themselves to their friends, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Like that could be almost worse. Like, I don't want to talk about this because that might change y'all's opinions of me. Like that is a real problem. So like like absolutely don't be afraid to take a break. There's some really good like quick guides on how to handle crisis, like how to manage a crisis and how to understand a crisis. Because some people, when they X-carding, they might already be in a crisis state where they're like emotionally dropping, and you kind of have to let the process work itself out where they emotionally drop, vent, wallow in that kind of misery for a second with all of you, hopefully safely. And then when they climb back out, it's okay, how do we feel? Let's all just go get a pizza. Or, let's all play cards or whatever it is. Like, however bad it was, you all should hopefully know your friend group well enough to know, tonight is done. We're going to go and do something else. Or, no, we can pick back up, but we are going to, fast forward or rewind or whatever we need to. And then as a GM, just be flexible. All right, that was a plot moment. I got to, ditch that timeline, and I will throw in some words, and I will write that later. I will write what that means later.
This is where I curse having a mechanical keyboard, because I have literally rewritten a scene on the fly while talking about it, and my hands are typing something else because they're typing up what's going to happen in the next scene. And unfortunately, if you've got a mechanical keyboard, there's no way to do that subtly. Because everyone goes, Drut's typing. What's she doing? What's going on?
Sorry.
Yeah. So
to bring it back to Cyberpunk, just very quickly, and plot points, the nothing will hurt your game if you ask your player, hey, as like an important plot point, I thought that this could happen to your character. For example, you got a liver on loan from a company, and they want to send someone to get it back because someone else paid more money to get it, and you're just a number in their file.
Right.
Would you be okay with the next session starting with you in a bath of cold water, wondering what happened? The player will know in advance, and they can tell you in advance, you know what? I'm okay with it.
Right.
Let's go. Does that mean my character is going to die? No? Okay. Will I have to quest to get a new liver? Probably.
Will it be from some stranger? Maybe.
Well,
Depends on my moral set.
But even if they know, your other players might not.
Right.
And that player can work in the surprise face when it happened, going oh my god, what's happening? And everyone's freaking out, but they were in on it from the beginning.
Yeah. It's like in that movie Alien, when the alien first pops up. None of the actors knew other than the actor with the alien coming out of their body.
Mm-hmm.
And so everybody else had a legit reaction, and the actor was just pretending the whole time as the alien was erupting their chest. I think this gets into the final question I have, and we've got a few minutes, which is great. Player character death. This is something that happens in Cyberpunk, or can happen in Cyberpunk. Tends to not happen in other games. How do the two of you handle PC death? Because I think that matters. People get very invested in their characters, and that's a wonderful thing. But sometimes the crits happen, and the PC dies. Have either of you faced PC death in your Cyberpunk games?
Not yet.
Okay, so maybe just in general, and maybe talk about how you handle that.
I tend not to. I try not to kill player characters.
And that's totally valid.
Let's rephrase that.
That's totally valid, though. That's totally valid. It's in my games, I don't want to deal with that. That's not fun. That's a valid experience.
My ideal situation is that somebody feels that they got out by the skin of their teeth.
That's always good. Always.
That is my ideal. I will. This is to my players. I will kill characters if need be, but I don't
I like how you just I'm gonna aside to my players real quick. You can die. Don't think I won't.
Yeah, yeah. Don't think I won't do it. But I dislike it happening randomly. Now, Cyberpunk random death can happen, and the crit rules, as in specifically in Cyberpunk, mean that that is more likely to happen. But especially if they've been playing for a while, a character death is a big thing. It can be a real bucket of water to the face.
Yeah.
And you've been invested in this. You've got into the character. You know who they are, and that can have an almost grief level period where you are shit. No, I just no. Nah.
It can end the game.
It can end the game. Yeah.
Because the
can.
vibe is different now. It's one of those things. It's if you do it, you want to do it right because it can end your game. Simon, what are your inputs? What are your thoughts on that?
So, I play even my like high fantasy games without any magic that can bring the dead back. So, regardless of the game that I'm playing, you die, it's over.
Okay.
What I will do, however, is unless it's a complete total fluke, the dice are against you, you rolled like something very bad happened, and you rolled poorly, and you died out of a fluke. There are ways to frame that in the narrative. Like, oh, we went to heist Arasaka, everything went well, and all of a sudden, that one person who tripped the alarm, they thought that they could, I don't know, like get to a door, like out, or like jump out of a window or something, and they failed their check and they fell down and died. Like, that's not heroic. That's not. But at the same time, that death might have purchased the group the time needed to get out. Like, alter the next encounter that should have been they get surrounded by Arasaka guards and something. No, you know what? That death, even if it's completely and by accident, it was actually, now it becomes important.
Right.
And the players will remember that character in the sense that, well, they gave us the chance, like, we lived because of them.
Right.
And we're not just going to say, oh, well, let's loot the body and move on. Like, that's not, like, that other person's been playing their character for a while.
Oh man, high school David played in a game where if you died in the game, your body got looted by your friends. And I have to tell you folks, that sucks. Okay? As the one who died, and then to watch the players like, cool, I'm going to take his like really cool gun he's always had. It's like, guys, like, come on. Like, so like there are things I would say, it really depends on the mood of the game, right? Some games you're intended to make disposable characters, and as soon as your your PC dies, their brother or cousin or whatever shows up, I'm here for their stuff. Okay, I'll take their old job. Like that. The old life path system in 2020 was intended to give you a lot of siblings to give you a lot of backup characters.
Yeah.
So like there are games that are built for that to happen, and that can be a lot of fun. In my games, I like assure my players my intention is not for your character to die, but if you're alone in a room with a bunch of people with guns and you start shooting your gun, there might not be anything I can do to stop it, right?
Yeah.
And then the second thing is when all that happens, if all that happens, I promise the player that their character death will matter to all of the NPCs at least, if not the player characters as well. Like the player characters should back that up as well. And certainly in our game, we had a PC death happen, and it completely changed everything. Like the Nomad family had to leave Night City basically to like get away from it all. The brother went off and got like super cybered up because he was never going to let that happen again to anybody else. Like and then the other guy who's starting a drug habit, like that began his downward spiral of trauma, and it's just gotten worse ever since. And so like that moment matters a ton to the game, and I think as a player, it's like, yeah, okay, cool, my character really mattered. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And like
And
that makes it feel not good, but like less bad, right?
one of
Character
the
death should not be incidental.
no,
Right.
It shouldn't be brushed under the carpet.
That's how I feel. I totally get that there are games out there where that is the gig,
Yeah.
and that's fine, that's fun. But for me, that's not fun. Like I want.
you know, you would know in advance, like going into a game like that yeah, tonight we're making random characters. We're gonna play Morkborg. Like everyone is just a pile of random stats, and the fun of the game is to try to get as far as you can, and you know you're going to die.
Yeah.
For
I've
character
run
death,
Kobolds Ate My Baby.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 to make death less random, I use something that I call the rule of 3. I'm always going to leave my players with 3 outs. You're inside a room stuck with a bunch of like security agents. They're armed. You're armed. You draw your gun out. Well, that was your first out. You could have probably tried to talk your way out. You decide to shoot at them. Your gun doesn't do anything. Their armor is like they're wearing like Kevlar or Metal Gear or whatever. One of them raises their hand and says, "Look, come on. You're not gonna do shit. Just don't make it like don't make us waste our time. Come on." And
nothing makes a player feel like they have no power in a room. Like the bad guy gets shot, and they're like, just stop.
Just don't. But that would be your other one. And then you tell the player, like, look, out of game, that's your other out. The cops aren't gonna kill you. You're gonna suffer consequences. That's for sure. You might wish you would have died. But that's your other out.
Yeah.
Now, if you decide to keep attacking them, well, that's just
that's player stupidity. I'm sorry that's just that you knew what you were getting into. I've given you the options. I've explained the situation. If you now want to hurl yourself into a hail of bullets from a vastly superior force, good luck.
And I have to say that like this is our sensibility, right? I feel like all three of us are kind of in the same boat in terms of how we view players. That's really cool. But like anybody who's listening, you might say, "Dudes, why so soft? Like, let's kill everybody. This is fun." It's like, awesome. If that's your game, do it. Like, whatever. And if you're listening and go, the thought of losing a character is anathema to why I play role playing games.
Yeah.
That's cool too. That's fine. You know, like I just wanted to like real quickly say that like the three of us feel like we're kind of in similar mindsets, and our mindset's not the only one, it's not the right one. It's just what's right for us.
Yeah. And I have just seen a comment, different games, different expected contract with the table. I'm going to be running an Aliens, the new Alien RPG.
Nice.
Now,
from Free League.
From Free League, yes. Let's put it this way. The cast ain't going to be as big by the end of each session.
There's an old Henry Rollins. There's an old Henry Rollins quote that I use at people every so often. It's like, we're not all gonna make it. Like that's a.
I'm not gonna lie, we're gonna lose a few of you. And that is that is going to be a very different system. That's a very different feel. You may be attached to these characters. Sorry. The odds are good that they are, and actually on the Cyberpunk front, the new Alien game, the campaign game as opposed to the cinematic, which is just murder, death, kill.
Yeah, that's really good of them to do. Yeah.
But the campaign game is very Cyberpunk. Neat. You've got corporate dystopia. You've got purely pay for play military forces, and actually there is a lot in common with that. So the campaign may have the campaign game. You can get attached to characters. It will have a big impact.
Yeah.
Cinematic game. If you've seen an Alien movie,
Yeah.
The odds are good you're not making it out of this one.
Yeah. Hopefully one of them makes it. Yeah.
I'm not. Yeah, but different games, different standards of character death.
Totally. And I think that like one thing, anybody who's never had PC death and is kind of afraid of it, I would say that it can be really cool. Like even as the player, it can be at the end be like that's the story you want to tell for years about like this character that was so important to you and died, and then like all this stuff happened as a result, like that down the road can be a pretty cool like thing to take away from a game. So like if you've never had a player character death at your table, like by all means, you know, don't like chase it, but also don't be afraid of it because it can be a really cool storytelling thing. We have gone over a little on time. We're like,
Sorry.
no, this has been great. I've really enjoyed this. I was kind of looking through the questions. I feel like we've gotten to most of them. Real quick, what is your favorite? Is like an early question from Doctor Who Man. What is your favorite rule system for Cyberpunk campaigns? Just real quick, what's your number one rule system for Cyberpunk?
Cyberpunk Red.
Cyberpunk Red. Yeah.
I'm going to be tragic, and yes, I think Red has nudged out Shadowrun Forth for me.
Nice. Yeah, so I think the two of you have the full rule set, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So we do too, and like I agree. Like 2020 was my baby for a long time. I've been playing 2020 for a stupid amount of years, 20 years, and having played Red a couple of times now, it's like, gosh, it's just so. I'm really into it. Nothing disparaging against the other great Cyberpunk games out there, like Vert and all those things. Like they are all good, but I'm really right now in love with Cyberpunk Red.
Yeah,
that's just me. Good question.
Like
Night Bites. When are all three of us playing at the same table? I would love to do that. That would be so much fun.
Yes.
That would be so much fun.
The more I hear Linda.
Drutt. Yeah, I caught myself filling in an official form the other day, and then when it asked for name, I started writing DRU, and I just went no.
But the more I hear you talk about like your Cyberpunk game, and even David, the more I hear you talk about it, I'm like, one, I've never played Cyberpunk.
Oh, you've always been a GM. Yeah.
So I really want to play with you.
We should like guest each other
in one of y'all's
things or something like that.
Yeah,
that'd be so much fun.
I'm looking forward to getting my Red game sorted, but I've just come off of a Witcher 7 episode Witcher, so I'm kind of trying to get my head out of Interlock just for a little while, and before I dive into something else, and whether it's going to be Falkenstein or whether it's going to be Red, it's kind of I'm going to run both. It's just which I run first.
Yeah. So real quick, last question I want to touch on in the chat. Celtic Majora asks, is there any news when the full rule set for Red is going to be out? Yesterday they were on our stream talking as part of a Gen Con Online. They were on here talking about how they are working very closely with all of their existing distributors, existing printers and all that kind of stuff. They want to do right by them, but all of them are suffering because of coronavirus. So they are delayed on logistics, it feels like. And so they want to do right by their existing partners, the partners they've had for decades. And so they can't give us a firm date yet, but they are working very hard to get everything done. And just kind of sucks the world we live in right now. They can't already be out, but I totally respect them being good to the people who've been good to them for years and years.
I guess I gather the latest release date is as soon as is practicable.
Right. Yeah. I think everybody wants it ASAP. It's just like how soon can they realistically get it done and then deliver on that and all that kind of stuff. So unfortunately, they have to rely on other people to do that, and they love those people, rightfully so, and are trying to do right by them. So
they are good eggs.
Yeah.
A company that actually cares is so not Cyberpunk, but it's such a good thing.
I am going to make no suggestions that if you peel away the top layer, secretly there is evil plans going on. I would never imply that of anyone I hope will ever employ me again. So who is that?
Yeah, I think that a lot of people say, oh, they're delaying it because of like conspiracy stuff. It's like no, just like printing is hard and like delivery is hard right now. Like it's tough. That's like the thing. Yeah.
The corona apocalypse is going on. Come on, guys! It's everybody's hit with it. It's gonna happen. We'll get there.
Okay,
it'll be ready when it's ready.
So I think we're 10 minutes over, which is all good. I love everybody hanging out and giving us your time. Thank you all so much for staying extra. Linda, can you real quick again kind of plug what you're up to, your channel, all that kind of stuff, so everybody knows where to find you, and then Simon will do you.
Okay. My personal channel is Druttercup on Twitch, and I am a variety streamer. I do at the moment I'm running Monstrous Mondays, which at the moment is Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, and I'm playing Beyond the Steel Sky on Tales from a Thursday, which are fairly obviously on Thursdays, which is sequel to one of my absolute all-time favourite point-and-click games, Beneath the Steel Sky, and I'm loving that. And the Hint_Plays channel on Twitch is our actual play. We have many GMs. We have several games. At the moment, we've got AD&D Second Edition going.
Nice.
We work on a 3-week rotation.
Cool.
So basically, your player get the same game every 3 weeks. So we've got Swords of Slaughterdeep of AD&D, and
I think there's some PC death going on in there.
how we made it out of level 5 of the Undermountain at level 1, I do not know. To this day, I do not know. Yeah, we got dumped on level 4 or 5, and it was fine. Yeah, that's great. We'll walk. And we are also playing Mutant Year Zero. And then we'll be going on to Crimson Skies.
Oh, fun.
Based on the video game and tabletop miniatures game.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So that's what we've got going at the moment. I have literally just finished Witcher. The complete run of our Witcher Series 2, Wilhelm's Scream, which unfortunately is Wilhelm's Cream and refers to beer, is going up on our YouTube channel of Hobby Gamers International.
Good. What about you, Simon? What are you up to?
So you can find me over on Twitch at twitch.tv/wanderingdm, or on Twitter with I can't post links or whatever. Maybe because I mistyped Twitch.
Oh, right.
Twitch.tv/wanderingdm. Yeah, that's why. So yeah, you can find me there or at wandering_dm on Twitter. Currently, we are playing on Fridays a Cyberpunk Red campaign. We are in our second season. Basically, a season is like 8 to 10 sessions, and then we take a break for like a week or two, and then we come back. So this season actually was all about a road trip. More than half of the game was about not being in Night City.
Nice.
And the players have just gotten back to Night City now that they know that someone has put a hit on them.
That's awesome.
And on what other games do I have? Oh, on Thursday nights we play Dragon Age with Cypher of Tyr. It's a very fun alternate universe Dragon Age game. And on Saturday, beginning next week, we are reprising our Rapscallion, our pirate game. Rapscallion is a Powered by the Apocalypse pirate game. It is awesome.
Fun.
And it's tons of fun to pretend to be a pirate. And then we are going to have other shows. I might be putting out like calls for people on Twitter for September and after.
Twitter if you want to get into
if you are interested. And also, if you follow me on Twitter, you'll have links to the stuff that I've published, either on DriveThruRPG or on Sandy Peterson's games.
Nice. Awesome. That's really cool.
If you don't object, actually, where people can get in potentially on our games for Hintplays, because we are looking for players, we're looking for GMs.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be just on our Sunday evening slots. We're happy to facilitate people getting together and playing virtually any night of the week. They don't need any of the core players. But we have a Discord for Hobby Gamers International, and if people are interested in getting in, then come and say hi to us on there. Is it okay if I drop a link?
Yeah, please do. Absolutely. Yeah.
Cool beans.
This is share the love. Absolutely.
Okay, thanks very much. So yeah, that is the Hobby Gamers International, and that is run by yours truly.
Beautiful. That's great.
Okay.
Go
ahead.
I just want to thank you, David, for putting this panel together.
Yeah.
My pleasure. I'm so thankful that the two of you made the time to be here. I wanted to do a cyberpunk panel, and I did not want to do it alone. So thank you both for
Yeah.
bringing your insights and your input, because I think that though we are very similar in some spaces, we are also very different in others in terms of
Mm,
like what the juice is for us in cyberpunk and all that kind of stuff. Like I thought that was all really
yeah.
good. So I love that kind of different opinions and all that good stuff for everybody to kind of chew on and take home for
Yeah.
themselves. Just to talk a little bit about how.
Really
Oh, go ahead.
interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
So thank you. It's been incredibly interesting.
Thank you.
It's too easy to end up in your own bubble, only talking to the people you know directly.
Yeah,
And it's so great to spread that out a bit
that's
and
that
see
was my
how
other
other people
goal.
think.
Is I don't want to be just in my own little HSG bubble. I want to like hear from you what you're up to. This has
Yeah,
been really informative for me. So thank you both.
cool.
And just so you all know, anybody who's meeting me for the first time, High Shelf Gaming is started off as a weekly podcast. It's kind of on a hiatus because of coronavirus. I'm like way under stuff on real life. I can't seem to edit my own podcast right now. But it's a podcast on highshelfgaming.com. And then obviously we're here on Twitch. We have a YouTube where anything on Twitch tends to end up on YouTube. We play Cyberpunk Red on the weekends. It was a West Marches style game. It is now a regular classic kind of campaign.
Hmm.
So it is shifting. Chapter 2 is the shift from West Marches style to regular style. And then on Wednesdays, we play Blades in the Dark, which is run by Mike Reckelson. And Blades in the Dark is a, really, really fun scalawag game. None of us are good. And we are all blissfully ignorant of each other's dirty deeds. It's just really fun. And we are also in the same kind of mind of like, please join our Discord, get hooked up. We want to meet new GMs. We want to meet new players. We want to be running more games. I'm working on a Werewolf the Apocalypse game right now, kind of going back to my roots. That was my first role-playing game ever. I want to do a monthly Werewolf the Apocalypse game. And that will be starting soon-ish. We are building characters, building the world right now, the back end. And then we'll start playing that on a monthly basis, probably like Tuesday nights, once a month kind of thing.
Cool.
Or next thing. So, yeah, thank you both again. This has been a real treat. And thanks, chat, for the great questions and the great interaction. I saw all of you helping each other and just being cool. And I just really appreciate everybody showing up and being just great to each other and to us. Really, really nice of all of you.
Thank you. It's been lovely.
Yeah. All right, guys. I'm going to sign off. Have a good night. As always, have fun and play well.